This is Jason Tolbert, and I'm sitting down with John Adams, who's running for Congress here in Central Arkansas.
Thanks for coming, Jason.
Yeah, John, the first question I always like to ask people, it's really the most basic question, I think, when you're running for office, and that's just, why do you want to be a congressman?
I want to be a congressman because a lot of the issues that I care most about the fiscal future of the country and about where we're headed in terms of our national government's relationship with people here on the ground in Central Arkansas that are trying to do right by their families, by their employers, by their employees, are really finding that Washington is not working for them, and I want to go try to make sure that we can make Washington work for people here in Central Arkansas that are working hard every day and deserve a Washington that works for them.
Okay. Well, you have 5 people in the primary. Everybody's trying to battle
Sure.
to get noticed with that many people in the field. What distinguishes you? What separates you apart, makes you different from the other 4 people in the race?
Private sector experience. I mean, I think I've done more as a teacher, as a business lawyer, to deal with what Washington does, rather than dealing with politics from the point of view of someone that's an insider. So, for example, people talk a lot about job creation plans being the big issue, in this race, and I get very frustrated with job creation plans that seem to me more geared towards giving politicians the chance to claim they created jobs than actually to create jobs, and especially to create jobs in the long term, because we have to build the conditions for prosperity here in Central Arkansas, and there's no real shortcut to that. People talk a lot about job creation tax credits and things like that cost 10 or 20 billion dollars over the life of the legal change, and that won't really create that many jobs.
So how do you go about creating jobs? Obviously, unemployment is a big issue here in this election cycle.
Sure.
How would you go about that as a congressman? What's your approach?
Well, I think to the extent that there are unspent stimulus funds that were backloaded to go even into next year, we need to go ahead and spend those. We've seen the effects here in Central Arkansas of things like road construction, things like green energy investments, things like 2 new floors to the cancer research building that's being built at UAMS. And those things are better ways to spend money to try to create jobs, because they not only create jobs now, they also lead to further dividends for our children down the road as we have these roads and research facilities and things like that we need to continue to thrive as a local community here.
Sure. Well, one of the things you and I share in common is we both work with taxes. And we both share kind of a frustration, I think, with the current tax code.
Sure.
What are some of the ways you'd like to see the tax code reformed? And I know that's sometimes an issue that gets ignored, but what are some reforms you would like to see made?
Well, I think there's been a lot of credits and proposals that have been sort of stacked, into the code, often with very good intentions. But I think they're, from the point of view of people in Washington, or from the point of view of even political insiders here in the state that aren't used to dealing with taxes from the point of view of a taxpayer or a tax professional trying to advise folks that are trying to, create jobs or do the right thing for their families. So, for example, saving for education is more complicated than it needs to be. There are 529 savings accounts, but there's also a HOPE tax credit and a lifelong learning tax credit and all kinds of other interest exclusions and deductions that could all be combined into some sort of unified way to deal with school costs from sort of a federal perspective. So I think you sort of end up with a situation where I don't think it stems from any real bad intent, but just the sort of Washington insider perspective, where you're trying to add on little bits to the problem, means that for people like us, like you say, that have to actually get in there and try and advise people or deal with it ourselves, it's just hopelessly complicated, and it doesn't work at all.
Right.
And there are a few different areas in addition to sort of education policy where those kinds of things have happened. We already have seen 3 or 4 different ways for small business capital stock to get maybe exempted from capital gains, or for a certain amount of income to get exempted, and that's all so complicated that most people starting a small business can't use them anyway. So the idea that we'd add more, as some of the people in this campaign have proposed, rather than streamlining and
right.
simplifying and trying to cut taxes on lower income people generally, just strikes me as kind of unrealistic.
Sure. Well, the last question I had, it's the same question I asked Patrick Kennedy when I sat down with him. Obviously, you know, a lot of my readers come from a very conservative perspective.
Yep.
So what do you have to offer conservative voters that may be voting in the Democratic primary? Why should they go with you? What would appeal to you for a conservative vote?
Well, I think generally the outside of Washington view is what a lot of people are looking for beyond any kind of strict ideology. I think a lot of people, a lot of Democrats in Arkansas are pretty conservative folks, and what they want is things that work. I think as much as anything else, they're tired of the sense that we've been trying things to get out of the recession, trying things to change our dependence on foreign oil, trying things to make schools work better, and they just haven't been working. So I think I would really focus a lot on that practical experience I have as a teacher and as a business lawyer outside and in the private sector.